Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Good evening, my friends, and welcome to our Ukrainian rally today. My friends, I speak to you with a heavy heart. I wanted to praise Trump. I wanted to give Trump some praise, to have some hope. Things were going to go well, but alas, his rhetoric in the last few days has not been good at all. It has been very lacking, and very, very few good news the last few days. Very, very little good news, and a lot of bad news, a lot of bad rhetoric coming from him and from his people. But alas, my friends, we need to call reality as it is. We can't be living in make-believe. And we will do that today. We will spread this information fairly and honestly, as it is. But before we go any further, my friends, we're going to start this rally, as we always do, with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ще не вмерла України, ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу тіла ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна! Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
There's this perpetual idiotic argument that keeps going around through the mouths of many politicians in the world. This argument is as follows. Oh, Ukraine, it shouldn't have engaged in this war. It was a bad war to engage in. Yeah, sure. Imagine that situation. A man gets attacked on the street, and then later on the cops show up and tell him, oh, you know what, maybe you shouldn't have engaged in this fight. Well, thank you, Mr. Captain Obvious. I wish I wasn't attacked. I wish that individual, that psychopath, can stop punching. The same works for Ukraine, my friends. This stupid argument that, oh, you know, Zelensky, Ukraine, it was a bad decision to engage in the war, bad decision. This needs to stop. This is stupid. This is beyond stupid. This is brain cancer, my friends, in a metaphorical sense. What kind of logic does this make? What kind of sense does that make? Oh, you know, Ukraine got attacked by Russia. It was a bad move by Ukraine to fight back in that war. What were they supposed to do? What was Ukraine supposed to do? To just lay low and allow Russia to do a new Holodomor in our modern day and age? And then these same fools who say this argument, say, oh, you know, but no, Holodomor would never happen. That extermination, no, it's the modern day and age. No way Russia would do an extermination, right? Again, stupid. How many times has Russia shown zero concern about caring for human rights and for the Geneva Convention? How many times has Russia committed the most heinous, atrocious, and disgusting human rights violations and crimes against humanity? How many more times are needed before fools in the free world finally realize that Russia cannot be reasoned with? Russia needs to be talked to from a position of strength. Only that. That is the only way to deal with Russia, with words. By banging your fist on the table and saying either you do this or else. But that's not what we see. That's not the kind of rhetoric Trump is giving nowadays. Again, stupid.
Як ти?
You know, my friends, mere words coming from a president can have a huge impact worldwide. Not too long ago, Trump started his own cryptocurrency, the Trump coin. And he earned billions immediately, just like that. Just because he has a community backing him in the United States and in the rest of the world. So, Trump saying something of the sort of, oh, you know, Russia, you know, we need to negotiate with Russia, we need to bring them back to the international community to deal with them. What? Why would you bring them back? And then he has this stupid conversation about Ukraine having to give the United States special rights to its rare earth and minerals. For what? For the aid that's never going to come. For the support that has been waning ever since he became president. For what? For what kind of achievements is Ukraine supposed to give the United States special rights to its minerals? For what? My friends, Ukraine has received promises at the Budapest Memorandum. Of course. The word jugglers in the free world are now saying, oh, you know, but that memorandum was non-binding. Good job. I'm sure every other country in the world will be eager, they'll be thrilled to sign treaties with the countries of the free world, knowing that when push comes to shove, knowing that when they are supposed to get what they deserve to get, the free world is going to collectively say, oh, you know, you haven't read the small print. My friends, it's time to stop being stupid and stop believing in this idiotic rhetoric. Oh, you know, if we give more concessions to Putin, he's gonna give up, he's gonna stop, he's gonna behave. No! He showed that he will not, many times. And how many times do we have to see it happen again? It's pointless, completely and utterly pointless. Once again, my friends, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but this is all very stupid. I feel like the United States are slipping towards an idiocracy, where the politicians don't say what is. You know, the Biden administration, it had its faults. It would keep up a good rhetoric, but then they would do almost nothing of what they were supposed to do. They would just do the bare minimum. Now with Trump, it's questionable whether or not that is going to continue in the first place. I mean, it's better to do the bare minimum than to do nothing, than to do harm. What kind of action is this? What kind of points are these? I don't know what to tell you, my friends. I do not know what to tell you. I was trying to see what Trump might be trying to get across. But once again, inviting Putin to the United States, what? What? What kind of stupidity is this? A new Chamberlain, that's what we got in the United States of America. A new modern age Chamberlain. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. The free world is now being ruled by an individual who wants to appease its enemies. Thank you very much for that. I mean, we might as well end the rally here. I mean, after all, our point here is to tell people the truth, to tell people what's going on. But if people plug their ears with wax and with cotton and refuse to listen, I mean, what else can we do? What else can be done if in the United States of America their president is now spreading stupid rhetoric that does not work at all, that has zero reliability? If put through the minutest bit of scrutiny. How can we deal with that? How can we negotiate with someone like that? Seriously. Apparently China has offered their own way of negotiating peace in Ukraine. And get a load of this. They offered that the United States, America, and Russia would be negotiating peace without the presence of Ukraine. In other words, they'd be negotiating the fate of Ukraine without Ukraine. I mean, makes sense, makes perfect sense to me. My friends, what kind of a world do we live in? With this going on right now, are people truly that blind that they do not see Putin is going to continue this war if he feels like he won? Putin is an old man. He's not going to live forever. But if he wins, it will mean that his successor, whoever it is, will try to do exactly the same things that he was doing in his time in power. So how do we stop that? It's very simple. We prove that Putin's way is not doable for the future generations of politicians in Russia, or whatever future Russia might have as a country. For all we know, one of these beautiful days, the war is going to be over. And all of these Russian soldiers, all of these cripples and people with mental issues that they got on the battlefield are going to return to their little derevnyas, to their little mud huts in Russia. They're going to see the absolute state of their disgusting country. And they might just have the bright idea of rebelling. A little bit like what Prigozhin tried to do, but he got cold feet, poor thing. Well, I'm sure he's warm in hell nowadays, after being shot down near Moscow on his private jet by the Russian terrorist regime he fought so much for. That, my friends, is the fate of every man and woman who might have the bright idea of siding with a psychopath. You see, when you side with a psychopath, even if that psychopath wins, you lose anyway. Because when he wins, congratulations. You let the psychopath win. Now you are the next victim. And who's going to help you next? Now the psychopath has won. We can't allow that to happen. We come here, my friends, to give you news about what's going on in terms of this war, and in terms of how it influences every single one of you, every day of your lives. How the war in Ukraine will decide the fate of humanity. This Russo-Ukrainian war is not bound to the borders of Russia and of Ukraine. The whole world is involved in this. And if it goes Russia's way, what's going to happen next? My friends, not too long ago, I did a speech with our friends from Hong Kong, Taiwan, the Uyghurs, the people of Tibet, who protested against the mega embassy that the CCP is planning to build here in the United Kingdom, here in London, in the Royal Mint Court. That place, for those who don't know it's a castle. It has huge walls, 7+ meters high from what I've seen. My friends, it's a fortress. For the CCP to get a spot there and build an embassy, they can do whatever they want there. They can capture people on the streets and lead them to the dungeon, to their personal dungeon, ironically right in front of the Tower of London. I mean, what's going to happen next? Are they going to demand to buy Buckingham Palace? Have values become so cheap that we're going to sell them for a couple of bucks? No, my friends. The free world is built on those values. Many people are forgetting what those values are. Many people don't even care in the first place. Many people prefer to support Russian and Chinese and Iranian proxies simply because it's trendy, simply because it's popular. They go on TikTok and they melt their brain with idiotic videos, knowing that that app is specifically built to mess your mind up, to make you dependent, to make you hooked. And yet we still got people complaining about the desire of banning TikTok. That app should never be allowed in the first place in the free world. Do you know that in China, there is another TikTok they have for their own people? And that one doesn't mess with your brain as much. In that one, they have actually useful information. being spread around, not just brain rot. But of course, as usual, my friends, the world seems to be sliding into this idea of an idiocracy, where people don't know and don't care about whatever is going on around them. If you want to see the future that is right in front of us, we're at the precipice of that future. Look at Russia. Look at what kind of answers their people give when they are questioned by reporters on the street. When they're asked about their politics, they say, I'm not a politician. When they're asked about what they think about the decision of their president, they say, I don't know, I don't care, it doesn't involve me. That's the future, my friends. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations. We're sliding towards an idiocracy. Thank you, my friend. You know, it's good to have a positive outlook. I hope I can keep that positive outlook myself. But alas, it's difficult nowadays. It's very difficult. Once again, my friends, what exactly is Ukraine supposed to give the United States special rights for its minerals for? What does Ukraine get in return? Tell me. I'm itching to know. No security guarantees, no American troops in Ukraine, no return of all the Ukrainian territories, no more sanctions on Russia. Basically, Putin gets everything he wants and more. What are we supposed to do with that? My friends, that's exactly when we need to draw a line on the floor, to draw a line that cannot be crossed. We can't allow the Russian terrorist regime to do as they please. Because if they do as they please, this country will be in ash. And everybody will be glassed here. For those who don't know what being glassed means, look some of the modern warfare that we have nowadays. Look at some of the videos of modern warfare. Look at the capabilities of artillery, of rockets. They can completely glass a city. Zelensky said so himself. Security assurances without the United States are not real security assurances. The Europeans have not prepared enough. They were slacking off, my friends. They're still slacking off. Look at the state of the militaries of Europe. Not a single country in Europe right now can beat Russia in a head-on fight. Not a single one. Only together can they do it. And how? Please do explain this one to me. How can Europe beat Russia together if it has a whole bunch of Trojan horses like Hungary and Slovakia always vetoing any kind of decision that may help Europe move to a better future? How are we supposed to win like this? Because I am not seeing a way, the way things are going right now. Things have to change. And they will change if people understand what we're dealing with right now. But alas, it feels like people do not understand and do not want to understand and do not want to act even if they understand it. What a shame. We stand here in front of so many monuments of great people around us. Slim, Alan Brooke. Over there we have the cenotaph. Over here we have the women of World War II. And many other monuments of people who have created this country from scratch, who have endured and who have made the values of this country endure. And what do we have now? An uncaring society. The world is crumbling at the edges of Europe. And fools say, oh, that's not my country, not my borders, not my bother. Why should I be bothered about the Ukraine? That's how they like to call Ukraine sometimes. The Ukraine. What a stupid thing to say. You know what? I've been rereading some parts of the Budapest Memorandum. It even says the Ukraine there. What a disrespectful slap in the face that is. My friends, is this democracy? Is this what people fought and died for? Is this diplomacy? Is this a diplomacy amongst the free world? How are you, my friend? Well, you know, I am kind of shouty too, so I'll give them a break today. Won't even mention it. You know, I do wish that the people who want to say something please stop and say something. We're perfectly willing to hear you out, to answer some of your questions. We're always willing and able to do that. And you know what, my friends? That's the unique thing about our rallies. Our rallies are open to the public. If you want to participate, to ask something, you can. That's always been the case. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that we're going to give all of our time to random people passing by us. No. But we are willing to answer a quick question or to interact a little bit with some people. We're perfectly willing to do that. And it would be nice, you know, it would be nice to hear some feedback on what's going on right now with Trump. I mean, because it does not look good at all, my friends. It's not looking very good. Not at all. You see, that's the funny part about finance and about overall human mentality. When somebody of import says something, they don't actually have to do that much to make real change. All they have to do is to say something, and people will already act based on their words. Imagine Trump said, Russia is a terrorist state. We will not be negotiating unless Russia gives back all the territories it has taken. Can you imagine what would happen with that? The Russian bank would most likely collapse in a day. They would be panicking. They would be screaming and shouting, "We're doomed! We're doomed!" That would be your average man or woman in Moscow. My friends, it would be that easy. But no, that's not what Trump said, is it? Instead, Trump chose to defend stupid points that have been made before, that have been debunked before. Alas. A missed opportunity is what this is. And I must repeat myself once again. Trump is right now behaving just like Neville Chamberlain, who negotiated, quote unquote, with Hitler, with another psychopath in the past, and came back with a deal. But you know what? World War II started around a year after that deal. So what was the point? Hitler became strengthened. Hitler received justification for his actions, and he basically started acting more brazenly. What a surprise! If you appease a psychopath and you legitimize them, they behave as if they are correct. What a surprise indeed. Nowadays, my friends, Trump is becoming a Chamberlain of our days, which is a very sad situation to find ourselves in. But once again, my friends, we're perfectly willing to hear out the people who may have something else to say about this topic, who may disagree or agree with us. After all, it's a free country we live in, for now. But of course, if every world leader starts playing to the tune that Trump is playing to right now, well, my friends, the actions of the powerful can contaminate those who have less power than they do. And right-wing parties all over the world will immediately start playing to the same tune. Even the left wing will start doing that. The right-wingers will try to create new Nazi and fascist regimes. The left wing will do their usual spiel and say, oh, that wasn't real socialism. This is the time for real socialism to come up. So the far right and the far left are on the move as we speak. And who suffers? The center suffers. The moderates suffer. You know why? Because the moderates are sitting at home and watching some YouTube videos about cats and dogs and whatnot. And they don't know what's happening in their countries. They have no clue. They will only know when that flame reaches their doorstep, but at that point it's too late. You need to stop the flame when it's still in the forest, when it's reaching the city, not when half of the city has been burned down and it's in your neighborhood now. That is our message, my friends. And we really hope that at least some will listen. Fighter jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
Long range missiles 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 for Ukraine.
Let Ukraine strike back.
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 Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 Seize Russian assets.
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 More sanctions on Russia.
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 My friends, there are best case scenarios, most realistic scenarios, and worst case scenarios in this situation as in every other situation that we have nowadays in this war. The best case scenario seems fleeting, to be honest. The worst case scenario, more likely than ever before. But still, the most likely scenario is that Trump is going to make some kind of a deal in which Russia gets off the hook. And what happens next? Is there going to be peace? Without any kind of legitimate assurance, peace will not last. Peace will never last if Russia is allowed off the hook, if the sanctions are lifted, if Russia is taken seriously again on the world stage. Peace will never last in that situation, because it will mean that any kind of genocidal regime in this world can simply start a war, fully get away with this, and get away with some extra lands, rich lands too. Now sure, Russia doesn't really have the funds to rebuild those lands at the moment. But my friends, let's be honest here, there was no war in Russia proper for many, many years. Have they rebuilt the infrastructure they have there? Have they created a good life for their people? No. That's not their concern. That's never their concern. Their concern is not to improve the lives of their people. Their concern is to ruin the lives of others. That is their main concern, my friends. And that is the terrible reality of this situation we live in right now. Trump's words are not the same as actions. There's a saying that goes like this: don't listen to what politicians say, look at what politicians do. But once again, my friends, the words spoken by the US president have an overwhelming amount of power, even if he doesn't immediately start acting upon them. There was this quite funny video that came out a few days ago. It was Elon Musk's kid that Elon, for some reason, brought to the White House. And you know what that kid started shouting? He started shouting at Trump, saying he's not a real president. Now that was quite a funny situation to behold. Why was that kid even in the White House? He was 4 years old. What is Musk grooming his kid to become the next president already, with Trump still sitting there? It was pathetic. not a sign of strength. Trump kept complaining about Joe Biden looking senile and acting senile, and with all his gaffes and his trips and all of that, which is true. But look at Trump now. Where is that strength we heard so much about? Where is that strong man that would bring peace to Europe? Now he's saying, oh, you know, Europe is not going to be our concern, we're going to be dealing with other things. Is that strength? Is capitulation strength? Is appeasement strength? Is sitting in the White House with a kid shouting at you, telling you that you're not a president, is that strength? No, my friends, that doesn't look like strength at all. There's still time for Trump to fix this, for Trump to get back on track and actually do what needs to be done and put the Russian terrorist regime down for good. But is he going to do that? Questionable, very questionable, my friends. Which leads me to the next point. What's the future if the United States of America, which is looking very likely now, pull support away from Ukraine? The only hope at that point, my friends, is that Europe is going to finally pick up the pace. But is that going to happen with Trojan horses like Hungary and Slovakia perpetually putting sticks in wheels into the proper functioning of the EU and of NATO? Is that going to be possible with Turkey demanding concessions every single time they are asked something by NATO? Seems like a particularly weak organization nowadays, if you ask me. Maybe one of these days Russia will no longer be afraid of NATO. Maybe one of these days Russia will invade Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania. What then? Is Trump going to once again backpedal and capitulate and say, oh, you know, we care about China, not about Europe. We're not going to help. Sorry. My friends, a defensive organization that is toothless is useless, completely and utterly useless. It is very sad to see how the mighty have fallen, how the wise have become stupider. Very sad indeed. There's very little good for me to say today, my friends. Very little good. Once again, if any person who can hear us would like to interact, you're perfectly free to do as such. We always allow the crowd to say a few of their own things too, to ask a question or to interact. But I don't really see any point that can change this reality that is setting in right now. This terrible reality of a world that is sliding back into the past, not into a better future, but into the worst path. Very sad indeed. But we must move on, and we must keep speaking. Or else, everything truly will be lost. As the saying goes, the only way that evil has to triumph is for good men and women to do nothing. And if we do nothing, if every single one of us does nothing, because we know nothing, we care about nothing, and truly evil has already won. So we must do something, my friends. We must take initiative and take action in this terrible situation that we are facing right now. Sure, the United States seem utterly useless nowadays as the so-called world police. Imagine that. Imagine you are attacked on the street, and then the police shows up and starts scolding you for fighting back, and then lets the criminal walk free. Because you see, if he is put in jail, that causes more harm than good. You never know, maybe his gang is gonna get angry if he's in jail. Why put him in jail then? No, we need to try to rehabilitate him with zero consequences to his actions. What a stupid point to make. Rehabilitation with zero consequences. To just accept them back in society right after they have betrayed the trust that other people have in them. What a foolish move. I thought Trump was about law and order, not about limp-wristedness. But apparently we were all wrong. I mean, the people who might have thought that. It seems like Trump has betrayed those ideals that he claimed to defend before. But we will still wait and see, my friends. We find ourselves in a difficult situation. Because if Ukraine criticizes Trump too much, you never know, his ego might be bruised. And then he's gonna fully backpedal from supporting Ukraine. However, if we simply stay silent about this, he's just simply going to keep doing the same stuff. So we need to tell the world that this is not an acceptable solution to the problem. And we need to make sure everybody knows what the real solution is. And it is for Trump to not be a new Chamberlain. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
And now, my friends, we're going to have a short musical break.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Hi, good evening, and we heard what Pavlo had to say, and I think we agree with 99% of what he said, or maybe everything, absolutely everything. It's a pretty dark week in Europe, especially after the declarations we've heard in the last 48 hours. But I think we should not despair, and we should not be sort of so negative about what we can do. And by we, I mean those in the continent of Europe and beyond, in places like Canada and USA, and there are supporters of the democracy in faraway places like Latin America, I don't know, from Chile and Uruguay to Argentina, where the societies are really supporting Ukraine, and then South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. So of course, the coalition of those who are ready to support Ukraine and mean it, not just talk about it, but are doing stuff, is quite big. So of course, when you lose one of the biggest allies, which is the US, or the government of the US, for sure, the civil society in the USA is very, very much strong pro-Ukrainian, and it's not a partisan issue. So many of the Republican voters in the US are supporting Ukraine, so many Democrats or independents as well. But, we have the reality, and we have to look at the reality. We see the declarations by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance just a couple of hours ago in Munich, in the International Security Conference in Munich are, it's beggars belief. It's really, really difficult to understand how the vice president of the U.S. uses that platform in the speech on security not to talk about security arrangements which lasted for 80 years in Europe and how to strengthen them, but to say that the biggest threat for democracy is not Russia, is not China, but it's lack of freedom of expression in places like UK or other parts of Europe. And part of his declarations was defending some really far-right characters in this country, like a guy known as Tommy Robinson. That's not his real name, it's Stephen Yaxley, but he doesn't like that saying, so he uses Robinson. So J.D. Vance defending these sort of characters and saying almost positive stuff about other extreme far-right people, and have nothing to say about the security and arrangements of how to solve the Ukrainian crisis for favoring Ukraine. But I would like to first couple of points of what Pavlo has said. Of course, the quickest comparison we all reach, and it's very fitting comparison, it's 1938 and Munich, when Czechoslovakia was given on a plate for Hitler, and Hitler gave this promise of peace in our time. That's how Neville Chamberlain presented it when he landed back in London. And as Pavlo said, the whole peace thing lasted just 1 year, and then the Second World War broke out. But in defense, in slight defense of Neville Chamberlain, he started these negotiations with Hitler while having very clear realization that the balance of force in Europe is really in his favor, that it's Germany is much stronger, and the military complex of Germany is gigantic and becoming even stronger. While Trump is giving right now a lot of sort of free passes for Putin, when Putin's army and Putin's economy is actually on the brink of really, really huge problems. Economy, we can never trust how Russia's statisticians politicians are reporting the level of economy, but we can clearly see that it is, it's experiencing huge difficulties, and the military complex, even if it's working, with a couple of ships or 3 ships, it is not producing enough. So Russia in 2025, according to many international economists and military experts, was getting, losing its steam. So ramping up the sanctions in this year and providing Ukraine with much more support, with economic support and military support would have been the proper decision to make, and there is still some chance of that happening. Well, it's quite a pessimistic view. So Chamberlain differs from Trump because these politicians were looking at the problem at a different time when, one opponent, Hitler, was getting stronger and stronger, while the other one in 2025, Putin, is getting weaker. My other point is that now is the time for those who are, repeating for 3 years the words that we will stand with Ukraine, actually do it. And I'm referring to the countries which do not need convincing that supporting Ukraine with all we've got is the right decision now. If we ask people or politicians in Finland, in Sweden, in Denmark, in Norway, in the Baltic states, in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Romania. So, each of those countries taken separately, of course, is no match for imperialist Russia's might. But all together, we are quite a formidable force. I mean, the army of Finland is one of the best trained in Europe. And they have this DNA of experience of fighting the Russians and actually, successfully doing it. The army of Poland is really rearming fast. It's getting modern weapons, modern training, 20 years of experience in NATO. The same goes for the Baltics, for the Swedes, for the Czechs, for the people, for other ones who are in this coalition of the winning. And let's not forget the here in London and the initiative of forming one force which is called JEF, Joint Expeditionary Force, was created here, with initiative, the political initiative was by Britain. It's right now with 9 countries who are willing to react fast to any, invasion or anything happening inside of the northern eastern part of NATO. So it's the UK plus all the Scandinavians plus the Balts, and Poland is participating in that as well. So now is the time for those countries who are not sitting on the fence, who are ready to act, to really up their support for Ukraine, give Ukraine everything it needs. Before it was always looking behind it, back and what will Washington say? Well, we know what Washington says now, and maybe now is the time for London, for the capitals of Europe where the decisions can be made and must be made. 3 years have passed of making one step forward and one back for the Europeans. That time has gone. Right now is the time to act seriously, is the time to make big decisions, and that's decisions about the military spending, ramping it up. The campaigns to prepare the society for the eventualities which might come up. Countries which are doing it, they can see that society is getting much more resistant. So let's say Finland or Estonia or Lithuania, the last couple of years, society is getting very clear information, what should be done if the 0 hour comes. Be prepared, be trained, know what you do, on the first hour, first day, first week, and that actually arms you, and that makes society much more resistant. I know, this is a it's impossible to say, without US help we can be sort of immediately successful. It's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be tough. But if we check, in the modern wars, the economic factor is a huge factor, and nothing changes, the statistics. The joint economic force of the EU plus UK is more than 10 times bigger than Russia's economic force. That is the power Europe has. So more sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia!
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia!
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia!
We know that the third, anniversary of the beginning of the war is approaching. I think the fitting tribute to that would be for the European countries where the Russian reserves are frozen already for 3 years, and we are talking 300 billion of Russian money, should now be not just be frozen, they should be confiscated and handed over to Ukraine. It's the best gift right now Ukraine should have. It's actually very needed to Ukraine right now. If it loses US support, this is the thing which Europeans should do, because most of that money is in Brussels, and a big proportion of this money isn't here in London in the Bank of England. So more sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia!
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia!
And we were chanting freeze Russian assets, but I would say confiscate Russia's assets.
Confiscate Russia's assets!
Confiscate Russia's assets.
Confiscate Russia's assets!
All right, well, that's my defense whatever anything.
Thank you very much, Lucas. Thank you. It was seize Russian assets, though, not freeze. We want to seize them.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим славним захисникам і захисницям тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
All right. I want to talk a little bit more about everyone's favorite topic today, which is Donald Trump Jr. Junior. Let's call him Junior. That would be befitting. Anyway, Trump. Everyone is complaining about what Trump says. Yes, what he says has some impact on the markets, has some impact within finance, has some impact within economy, but it's only short-lived, because what he says today, he reverses tomorrow. Don't listen to what politician says, look at what politician does. That's for regular politicians. In case of Trump, just don't listen to what he says, because he says one thing today, another thing tomorrow, and yet third thing day after. He's a master of bullshit. Therefore, reacting to what he says, being emotional, getting disappointed, don't do that. Preserve your things, your strength, preserve your mental strength for something healthier. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And it's counterproductive. Now, Trump has an administration. There are multiple people within that administration, and there are pro-Ukrainian, there are people who are anti-Ukrainian, there are people who do not care. If you think about Trump, he doesn't care about Ukraine, he doesn't care about Europe, hell, he doesn't care about America either. What he cares about one thing, and that thing is Trump. He cares about himself. This is the guy who does things whatever he wishes to do. And he is not concerned with any morals. He's not concerned with any values. The only value that he appreciates is money. Because money brings power, and pumps his ego. So money to pump his ego, to pump his influence. Therefore, listening to him is just doing disservice to yourself. If you look at the Trump administration, even to people who are close to him, you will listen absolutely different things, even from the same person. Let's take Defense for example, right? Defense said, well, Ukraine has to, we will draw a line, there will be demarcation, which neither party, neither side likes. We will not put Americans in danger. And at the same time, later today, he said, well, if Russia doesn't go for peace deal, we might we'll consider putting American troops on the ground. At the same time, Trump said the Americans will not go to war in Ukraine. Now his vice president says they might. You listen to the Minister of Defense who says, well, Ukraine will have to take the deal and they'll have to give up, they'll have to make concessions, and that's the only way to achieve peace. And then you have Lindsey Graham, one of the top Republicans, who said, well, I came to this conference with John McCain, who was a staunch supporter of Ukraine back in his day. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And he used to say, Putin sucks, deal with him. But everyone around said, no, you just don't understand him. And he kept on repeating, Putin sucks, you need to deal with him. And guess what? The people who didn't deal with him now are complaining about what happened. And they don't see that they just missed the chance of dealing with Putin when it was very cheap and very straightforward. So, Lindsey Graham said, well, showing at Zelensky, said, well, this conflict is easy to end. Just arm this guy. Arm this guy. Give them more arms. And that's how the conflict will end. Arm Ukraine as you promised.
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 Let's make ourselves heard. Arm Ukraine as you promised.
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 Interestingly enough, Lindsey Graham said, you know what? We are dealing with Putin right now and we're dealing with him cheaply. We have not put any troops on the ground. No Americans, a Western soldier died. All we did just gave Ukrainian arms. And those guys are kicking Putin's butt. Therefore, we need to give them more weapons to finally break the back of this beast. So, arm Ukraine as you promised.
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 And there is another way to help Ukraine to win, is to bring Russia down economically. And for that we need more sanctions on Russia.
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 Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian gas.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Stop buying Russian oil.
Because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
And so it is. While in the United States, crazy things happen. Crazy things happen. For example, John DeVance said, well, Europe is drifting away from our values. Says who? Says the representative of the country, whose top official was doing Nazi salute during press conference live on the TV. What kind of values is Europe drifting away from? From Nazism? Well, I'm glad they do. I'm totally glad they do. Just look at what's happening in the United States. Minister of Health Minister. Whom did they appoint? They appoint the guy with no relations to medicine, with the guy who was anti-vaxxer to start with, and they appoint him to be a health minister. What kind of health support will they have? What kind of medicine will they have? Now, okay, well, that's an internal deal, but then there is another case which impacts the whole world. The minister, not the Minister of Defense, the top FBI official, I believe, right? FBI, they appointed a woman who used to be a reporter, who is totally, who is very deep in conspiracy theories. In conspiracy theories. What kind of craziness is that? What kind of work will FBI produce going forward? Anyway, while that crazy thing is going in the United States, Europe is coming out of its slumber. Europe has been lulled into sleep defensively by the safety of NATO, by the military power of the United States by far too long. Since World War II, all the way until up now. It's been what, 80 years? For 80 years, Europe has been asleep, relying on the United States to provide the defense capabilities under Article 5. And that's correct. And that's something which Trump got right on during his first presidency. And about a year ago, Europeans saw Trump coming. Europeans saw that Trump might be becoming president for the second term, and they started preparing. That was like jolt of electricity to the sensitive parts of the body. They woke up and they started preparing. So if someone is crying about, well, Trump came to power, it's doomsday. No, it's not doomsday. It's gonna be unpleasant, it's gonna be difficult, but it's not doomsday because Europe was preparing. And right now, when Trump started negotiating directly with Putin before engaging Zelensky, before engaging Ukraine, and is making a point that, well, I'll make deal with Putin, who'll have to take it. European nations got together, France, Germany, Great Britain, Baltic republics, and they signed a memorandum and they stated, no, Europe has to be at the table. Europe has to have the say in what's going to happen, how peace is going to be achieved, and Ukraine has to be at the table, and that's it. So there will be no peace negotiations without parties which are directly affected, which are Europe and Ukraine. And that gave Ukraine a great way out, because now Zelensky, relying on this support, can stave away unreasonable demands by Trump and his administration. At the same time, Europe is realizing and started ramping up their military capabilities, their production of armor, production of supplies, armored vehicles, and so on. Europe is getting ready. Europe is arming, and Europe will become another superpower which equals the United States, and will probably surpass it in the future. And Great Britain, which was one of the two countries which led anti-Putin efforts since the day one, is heavily engaged and in many cases leading Europe towards its defense independence, so to speak. Therefore, it's not doom and gloom. All together, we will win.
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 And there will be tribunal for Russian war criminals.
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 And while Europe is supporting us, Zelensky, our president, over the last couple of weeks, over the last couple of weeks, showed some political stamina. The stuff that he says shows his political spine strengthening. And I strongly believe that we, with support of Europe, will withstand any winds which will be brought on by brouhaha in the United States. So what should we do? What should we do? Well, first of all, we should save our mental health by paying less attention to what Trump and his administration says until some agreements are signed and some concrete steps are made. Don't pay any attention. We cannot despair. People on the front lines, we have soldiers on the front lines will have to stay strong. People in the country will have to work to support economy, to support our army, and so should we. We should support our country and our army in any way we can, financially, emotionally, morally. We should come here to educate people who are coming by on what's going on in Ukraine, about the situation, and to make sure that everyone understands that the war is not over. It's not in the media anymore, but it doesn't mean that fewer people are dying. If anything, more people are dying now than a year ago. And because Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist
And
state.
what should we do? Bring down Russia! Bring down Russia!
Bring down Russia.
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 And when Russia is no more, we will have our beautiful, strong, Ukrainian independent state. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Нашим славним захисникам і захисницям тричі! Слава! Слава! Слава!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Now, my friends, the one thing that still gives me personally a hope right now for a better future are the actions of some of our European allies. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they have got themselves away from the Russian electricity at long last. Now, my friends, this is a great move. And it shows that there is still some initiative, some understanding of the situation we're in right now. Alas, the most powerful country in the world doesn't seem to have this understanding. The most powerful country in the world is now living in this sanctimonious idea that all of these ankle biters trying to chip away at their power far away from their borders are irrelevant to them. Not true, my friends. For even a small bug can kill a far bigger creature if it's poisonous. And that poison has been injected long ago. Look at the information space. Look what Musk has done with Twitter. It is now a bot farm. 70% plus of it. What's the point of going to some social media most of it are just bots. And Russia, Russia is a pioneer in terms of bot farms. They're the ones who started that kind of stuff. With Prigozhin in St. Petersburg, opening a whole building in which there were a whole bunch of individuals who would simply start spreading misinformation all over the world. What do we have now? Freedom of speech? Is that what this is? Elon Musk, the defendant of freedom of speech. That's a funny joke. Hilarious, in fact. No, my friends. This is not freedom of speech. Fools who claim that the United Kingdom has no freedom of speech, they're not pro-freedom of speech themselves. And what do they claim this for? Because there were persecutions for the individuals who were spreading misinformation that has caused violence in the UK riots not too long ago. My friends, there is a reason why if you shout fire in a packed theater, you will be persecuted. There's a big reason why. And that is that sometimes words will result in death. Or should we say, perhaps, that Hitler should not be persecuted for killing so many people simply because he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger, because he was the one giving the orders? Is that freedom of speech, perhaps? No, my friends. That is not freedom of speech. The words of American politicians are not just mere freedom of speech. They hold real power. And that power decides how the world is ruled. And if they're spreading complete and utter nonsense, we need to call them out on that. Because if we don't, then every single time the same old game will happen, in which they will say complete and utter nonsense. If they succeed, it's for them. They will say I was in the right all the time. If they fail, they will say, oh, I was just joking. Freedom of speech, man, freedom of speech. You can't always defend yourself with freedom of speech whilst you spread nonsense. We can't allow that to happen. My friends, I'd like to speak to the Ukrainian speakers in our rally for a short while. And I would also like to send a little message to our Russian counterparts, also in Ukraine. I'm sure many of them will try their best to not understand it, as they always try to do that, but I believe it is in their best benefit to understand what we have to say here. Друзі, я б хотів трішки сказати два слова вам за те, що останні дні відбуваються з Порошенком і всякі такі речі за нашу владу. Ми всі прекрасно знаємо, яка в нас влада. Ми всі прекрасно знаємо, що там можна половину людей пересаджати по в'язницях. Але в цей момент, поки війна триває, казати, що давайте зробимо вибори, о, давай Зеленський швидко мир роби. О, що ти, Зеленський, летиш з країни в країну. Це просто тупо, друзі. Це ідіотизм. Знаєте, що ще тупо? Підтримувати Пороха. От Порошенко – це один з найгниліших цих політиків, які в нас були при владі. Я знаю, що тепер є люди, які його люблять, поважають, які думають, що його треба при владу вернути. Я це прекрасно знаю. Я з такими людьми сам розмовляв. Я знаю, що я їм в цей момент дуже так болісно стаю на ноги своїми словами, так можна сказати, виразитись так. Але, друзі, правда в тому, що в 2017 році закрили найбільшу фабрику шоколаду Порошенка в Росії. Хто її закрив, питаєте? Росіяни, не українці. Порошенко сам цього не хотів. І був на це велетенський скандал. Чому там ця фабрика продовжувала працювати? Оце виходить, у нас війна з московітами, а наш президент їм шоколадки продає. І на цьому заробляє. Така у нас ситуація, друзі. Але в цей момент, Зеленський зробив щось, чого ніхто перед ним не робив. Він зробив так, щоб нашу цю війну в Україні, між Україною і Росією, бачив весь світ. Цього раніше не було. Скільки разів герої України повставали проти московитів, скільки разів вони програвали. Тому що в кінці московитів більше. У них більша країна, і в них більше дурів в голові. Їм постав на стіл паляничку з лайна і водочкою запити. І вони все, що хочеш, тобі зроблять. А от домовитись з українцями тяжче. Вони ж все-таки хоч поводяться як люди. А в Росії свинська культура. І вже ця свинська культура у них з самого початку їхньої історії, з самого початку, коли у них це було царство московське, з Іваном Грозним, як вони його називають, і свого сина вбив. Друзі, в цей момент дуже погано виглядає ситуація, я вам чесно скажу. Але знаєте що? Якраз в такі моменти нам потрібно найбільше говорити. Тому що поки українці є у цьому світі, то знання про те, що відбувається і відбувалося в Україні, продовжитиме жити. А якщо всі українці закриються вдома, будуть казати, а яка разниця, мені так удобно. Вони хочуть по-москальськи трішки побалакати. Вони не звикли по-українськи розмовляти. Кожен раз, що це відбувається, пам'ятайте завжди, що російська мова дотепер використовується як зброя, що Каїн і Абель також були братами. Я не релігійна людина. Але ця історія цікава в цьому контексті. Бо брати між собою найбільше борються. Кожного разу, коли нам будуть говорити за Достоєвського, за Чайковського, пам'ятайте, по-перше, що Чайковський взагалі українець. Почнемо з цього взагалі. Пам'ятайте, що коли вони говорять про своїх великих людей, що Петро Великий був французом, що Катерина Велика була німчаниною. Оце що виходить? А хто лишився такий великий, чисто з корінних росіян? Путін? А Путін великий. Прекрасно. Чоловік, який зрівняв свою країну з землею, але він щось там виграв, знаєте, тому що Росіюшка моя розширяється. Оце наші тут боти тут з іншого боку, таке завжди люблять сказати, ось таку фігню. От я би щось так сказав їм, чесно вам, друзі, скажу, я б їм сказав, що у них розширяється. Після того, як роками їх Путін гвалтував. Цілу націю вже гвалтує, відколи прийшов до влади. Спочатку так потрошку забирав у них свободу слова, потрошку їхні права людські забирав. І коли людські права у людини забираєш, то лишається звір. Така звірина, свиня, яка ропкає замість того, щоб говорити. І з такими людьми вже нема сенсу розмовляти, нема сенсу доходити якоїсь розмови. Але наприкінці цього всього, друзі, я вам хочу нагадати, що у Росії найбільша кількість українців поза Україною. І це розмова, що ми просто закриємо очі на Росію, на їхню опозицію, вони всі такі самі. Це також не можна робити. Виглядає на те, що Трамп збирається нас кинути. Побачимо, що з цього вийде. Якщо пощастить, то європейці щось будуть робити за це все. Якщо ще більше пощастить, то в Росії може якийсь переворот бути. Але зрозумійте одну річ, цього перевороту ніколи не буде, якщо ми віримо у цей ідіотизм, що немає добрих русських. Я не кажу вам шукати добрих русських, я кажу вам шукати потрібних росіян, які готові знищити терористичний режим. Найкращий спосіб зробити урон проти країни – це зсередини. Московіти це з нами робили вже скільки десятиліть. І прийшов час, щоб ми це зробили з ними. Поки там є українці, поки там є люди, які можуть щось трішки, два пальці, один об інший вдарити і щось змінити. Через це я вам завжди казав, треба розуміти російську опозицію. Навальна – це не опозиція. Навальний, це не опозиція. Я не за них говорю. Я говорю про тих людей. які кажуть, що треба закінчити війну на українських правилах, а не просто там трішки щось сказати, о, Крим не сендвіч, Крим не бутерброд, не віддам. Пам'ятаєте, хто це сказав? Це Навальний казав. Отак його просто і вбили в кінці. Єдина опозиція російська, офіційна. І навіть його вбили. А ким він був такий взагалі? Він був імперіалістом. Він набагато чим відрізнявся від Путіна. І навіть він набагато, вже забагато чим відрізнявся, коли його Путін захотів вбити, винищити. Це, друзі, всім має показати, що Путін найбільше боїться проблем всередині Росії. І тому мене дуже засмучує, коли іноді я спілкуюся з справжньою опозицією російською. І до мене люди підходять: Павло, ти себе принижуєш. Павло, вони так відбілюються. Мені абсолютно не цікаво, хто себе як відбілює. Я хочу, щоб війна закінчилась. Я хочу, щоб Росія була знищена. А якщо для цього нам треба говорити з московітами, то будемо говорити з московітами. Ця війна, друзі, не етнічна. І навіть мова, і ця вся ситуація, це Путін створив цю ненависть між різними мовами. Ця війна політична. Якщо знищимо Путіна, якщо знищимо російську владу, якщо принаймні урон їм дамо, то тоді щось може змінитися. Бо поки Росія дивиться всередину себе, поки у них пузо ворушиться, вони не годні переварити ту Україну, тих українців, яких вже давно русифікували. Поки це відбувається, друзі, вони не будуть мати, як зайти на Україну заново. На Америку виглядає на те, що немає надії. На превеликий жаль. Американці, вони цікавляться китайцями тепер. Вони хочуть щось трішки там здерти з України побільше. І з Росією знов пожати руки, і business as usual, як кажеться. Потрібна Європа тепер. Потрібно стати одним з Європою. І це єдиний спосіб нам реформувати Україну. Це вплив з Європи, з цієї країни. А цей вплив почнеться з нас, з українців, які живуть за кордоном. Тому, друзі, завжди пам'ятайте, ніколи не сидіти тихо за кордоном. І не цікаво, хто там вам каже, а чого ти не на фронті, а чого ти то не робиш, чого ти цього не робиш. Це все вам кажеться, щоб вас заткнути. Це все кажеться, щоб ви нічого взагалі не робили і не казали. Це кажеться, щоб ви забули, ким ви є. I apologize to all the English speakers who can't understand us. No, thank you, my friend, thank you. No, it makes me feel better, Героям слава, there you go, that's very well said. You know, that's what I'm talking about. But my friends, as I was saying before, our main priority needs to be unity. Right now, it feels like the United States are in a state of disarray. They have this identity crisis, where they don't understand exactly what they are. Some, frankly, foolish people are saying, oh, you know, the United States is fascist, we need socialism instead. That's stupid. But there is stupidity on the other side, and plenty of it. Some of those idiots on the opposite side of the political spectrum are praising things like, for example, the Confederates. You know, it really amazes me how people who claim that they are American patriots walk around with Confederate flags. The flag of the country, that the country they live in now, has beaten the flag of their enemy. But they don't see it that way, you see. They say it's their culture. Well, my friends, the Russians say that they have their own culture. You know what that culture is about? That culture is about lowering down your head really, really low, kissing the floor, and doing whatever your master commands. That is Russian culture. Beautiful, wonderful, fascinating Russian culture. And then when the master commands you to rise, you rise and you kill. That is what Russia is all about. That is what Trump wants to be negotiating with right now. That is what some leaders in Europe want to be negotiating with, want to be like And Orban, for example, and Fico, these individuals, my friends, are rotten to the core. And Europe needs unity. To achieve that unity, we need to make sure that these individuals are dealt with efficiently, at long last. All of these Orbans, Ficos, I was going to say all of these Tucker Carlsons, but it doesn't feel like the Tucker Carlsons in this world are going to be dealt with. Because in America, the Tucker Carlsons, excuse me, of this world are now ruling the country. Look who's in charge. Musk brings his 4-year-old to the White House so that his 4-year-old can tell Trump is not the real president. I wonder what Musk tells his kid. I wonder if he goes to kindergarten with his kid and he tells him, oh, you know, my boy, I am the real president of the United States. That Trump guy, you know, he's just this orange bomb I found on the street. I wonder if that's what he's saying. It seems that way. I mean, my friends, is that video, that footage, is that going to give respect to Trump? Are world leaders going to see this 4-year-old telling an old man that he's not a president? And they're gonna feel like, oh yeah, you know, Trump is my man, yeah, he's strong. My friends, it's a bit of a bad time we have right now, but above all, as I said before, we need to continue to act, to speak, and to show our presence. And this is something that doesn't necessarily have something to do with Ukraine in particular. It has to do with being a human being. Being a
Сережа,
human
все видно.
who lives in a free world, in a free society. Because if we do not do that, my friends, as we have said many times in the past, if you do not use that power while you have it, you risk losing it. And then the realization may come too late. Honestly, too late, far too late. You think the people in Russia don't realize what they have in their country? I mean, I'm sure a lot of them don't, because ignorance is bliss. And sometimes they choose to be ignorant, to not go insane with what kind of life they're living. But many of them do. They just don't care. That's the thing. They're not politicians, they say. Well, we need to all be politicians in a way. We need to all speak when we know a truth that is not widely known around us. That is why we're here, my friends. And I remind you all that our rallies happen here on Wednesdays at 6, on Fridays at 6,
Луганська область.
and on Sundays at 3
Суть, что будем
o'clock.
менять на Луганск.
On 24th this
Будем
month,
менять на всі
we're going to have a
території.
big event over there in Trafalgar Square. It's going to be the anniversary of the war, the 3rd
В
anniversary.
какой-то области.
3 years
Донецкой.
of full-scale war,
Курскую область
but many
будем
more
менять на
years
Донецкую
ever
область.
since the beginning of this war in 2014.
Да,
Let's
Донецк,
not forget about that.
Донбасс,
So please
да?
come and show your support there. And remember this too, my friends, that our rallies will no longer be 3 days after 24. After that, our rallies will only have
Люди из Донбасса сказали, что будем менять Суджу на Луганскую и Донецкую область.
Now, my friends, I believe that it's important to remember. Remember the history of this world. As the saying goes, only fools learn with their mistakes. Intelligent people learn with the mistakes of others. I think we can learn with our mistakes too, and with the mistakes of others. But it is better to learn with what others have done than to have to do it ourselves and suffer the consequences ourselves. So that we don't suffer those consequences in the future, we need to remember what happened in the past. In the past, there's been many heroes, many people who died and who fought and who suffered for a better future. And now in Ukraine, there are many people who are dying and who are suffering for that better future once more. In the name of those people, my friends, for those who died, those who suffered, those who are dying and suffering now, I'd like to invite you all to observe a minute of silence. Thank you. Now, there's always a lot to say, my friends, especially this week. And it has not been a very good week. I can't tire myself from saying that. But it will never be a good week if we do not act towards that happen. If we keep just hoping and doing nothing for it, then nothing will change. So no matter how much power we have, we need to use that little power to make that change happen. With the billions of people who live on this earth, all do what little they can, but together the change will be overwhelming. However, if all of those people simply see it in a different way, that the change they can bring is too small and thus it's worthless to even commit to it, then nothing will ever change. So make the right choice, my friends. I thank you all for your support. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Now, my friends, we're going to end this rally as we started it with the Ukrainian anthem.
Ще не вмерла України, ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануєм ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу тіло ми положим за нашу свободу, ми покажем. Слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Україна!
Понад усе!
Героям України тричі!
Слава! Слава! Слава!
Ворогам України тричі!
Смерть! Смерть! Смерть!
Дякую.
Thank you. See you on Sunday.
Голосование вы за Трампа или Путина. 1300 голосов, 23% за Трампа. Сделаем скриншотик на будущее. Так, мы проголосовали, мы, люди с Донбасса, проголосовали, что Суджу возвращаем, меняем на Луганск, а всю Курскую область мы меняем на Донецк. И желательно тогда меняем весь Донбасс на всю Курскую область. Так мы решили, мы так проголосовали. Здесь решили. Ar čia yra lietuvių? Lietuvių žiūri mane dabar, ar ne? Богдан Роланд. Дякую. Мы не то что решили, мы проголосовали. Девушка с Луганской области меняет Луганск на Суджу, а мужичок с Донецкой области отдает всю Курскую область в обмен на весь Донбасс. Ну так он сказал, вы можете назад примотать. Не, Вадим, нужно слушать, что сказали люди Донбасса. Вечер добрый, Михаил Громов. Так мы Путина не будем спрашивать. Мы уже проголосовали. У нас был референдум. Ну, Одесса, Киев, Локи Лав, там далеко еще. Суджа. Суджа это Украина, да? Надо помнить свои корни, историю. Сегодня самый холодный день был. Я очень замерз. Все очень не очень. Замерз, бедолага. Да, вообще холодно сегодня. Очень холодно. Что не был готов к этому. Конечно, в курсе. Суджа классное украинское место. Да, но рашисты разбили его. Украинское место было, но они его попалили и разбили. Ты чё в Лондоне трешься, собака сутулая? В смысле, а где мне еще быть? О, так, Дима отдыхает. Дима идет отдыхать. Ну что? А? Ну так. Свиней. Вот, вы за Трампа, 23 Путина, 77. Бачишь? Ты бачишь? А ты читаешь, да, по...
Читаю.
Читаешь. Своим бойцам подтягивают. Так. Do you speak English? You speak English? This is American guy. Одесса. Это вы где? Тут я написал Лондон. Люди не бачат. Що, почему не на мові? Та я можу на мові розмовляти. Все зелено. Україна розвиває. Америка. Бачиш? Потому что Путин это сила. I'm not American. No, we have American here. Say something from America.
I am American.
Let's go. Павло, хуйню почитаєш? Я чекаю.
Чекайте, так,
На мове. Сейчас Павло с вами поговорит на мове. О,
Ну, Віталій, кудись ти, дай,
Давай.
цю херню, блін, зараз було тут їх,
говорят, чому не на
їх
мові?
мутюкати. Що не?
Чому не на
Так,
мові?
сволочі ви останні, що ви тут тепер хочете? Обосання. Боже, як вони погано по-російськи пишуть ці люди. Блін, я українець, я ні одного дня не вчив російську вашу срану мову. Я краще можу писати по-російськи, ніж ви. Люди, а ну скажіть мені, боти ви срані, вас це не заїдає, що українці без одного дня навчання краще пишуть від вас, га? Вас це ніколи не заїдає, ні?
І розуміють українську мову, а росіяни не розуміють.
Та чесне слово, блін, мені тяжко читати цю херню, що ви тут написали. Диви, як обично, щирий патріот. А хто вам сказав, що я патріот взагалі, га? А хто вам сказав, що я патріот? Я не розумію, я тут кричав, я патріот чи що? Я вам щось таке казав, сволочі ви останні, га? А це я не розумію, блін. От починаються ці угадування, що хто він такий, ото циган, ото американець. Я те, чого ваш президент найбільше боїться. Українець за кордоном, який за це говорить, за цю ситуацію. Ви можете бути впевнені, що я пропіклуюсь за те, що за кордоном всі будуть знати, що ви всі за сволочі, і що ви всі за свині. І як з вами насправді треба мати справу. Отак по рожі дати нормально, щоб зрозуміли, де ваше місце, ви черв'яки останні. Що тут ще кажете? Га? Ну давай. У мене такий настрій тепер, що можу з вами трошки поговорити. Не Рашка, Російська Федерація. О, Російська Федерація! А давай трошки краще будемо називати. Давай московицьке ханство, га? А давай ще краще, путінське хамство. А? Не подобається, ні? Україну вже продали. Good luck. Не Рашка, а Парашка, ти правий, знаєш. Не Рашка, а Парашка. Там туди, вже ваш президент, та 100%, вже ваш президент туди срав цю Парашку, скільки років він при владі, вже туди сери. А ви рот все рівно відкриваєте і жирете все. От підряд все жирете. І потім ще питаєте українців, а що ви не з нами? А чого ви не жирете гімно з нами? А тому що ми не свині, як ви, блін. Ми вибрали людський шлях, а не жити як свині, блін. Для України історично принадлежить русам, а не скіфам. Що за руси, блін, що за руси? Хто такі руси, сука ти остання?
Немає що таке.
Хто такі руси, блін? Були скіфи спочатку, потім сармати.
Москали.
Потім після сарматів Київська Русь була, Київська Русь. А потім після Русі поділилася, от монголи приперлись, то все там винищили. І потім з того лайна вийшли ви. Ваше московське царство. Та, блін, чесне слово. Якісь руси, блін, зараз вже починається це revisionist history. Ревізіоністи ви срані. Зараз як Сталін, блін, от знаєш, як Сталін, блін, змінив, сука, там забирав якихось інших чуваків, на фотці були з ним. Він їх забрав, коли з ними посварився. Так і ви завжди. Откуда вилізло це существо? Боже мій, ну ти знаєш що, ну чесне слово, втрачаю IQ тут з цими людьми. Какую вже участь? Що? Дуже швидко пишете, сволочі. Ви заплатіть баблос. Я почитаю, що ви пишете. Ви надто швидко боти тут пишете один за іншим. Скиньте баблос Віталіку, він це все українській армії кине. Скажемо вам гарне дякую, вам всім свиням. І тоді все буде нормально, все буде норма. Да. Я вам обіцяю, люди, я вам обіцяю. Ви, якщо навіть дістанете ті землі України, на які ви зазіхнули, вам виграшу не буде. За пару років, так як Набіулі наказала, ну але звісно, ви свою власну політику ж не знаєте, ви ж не політики, ви не в політиці, вас це не стосується, вас лише стосується отак почати всяку херню онлайн казати іншим людям. Коли війна закінчиться, то неминуча стагфляція в Росії. От буде вам пізда повна, я вам гарантую. Найкраще, на що ви можете зазіхати, це те, що ви зіпсуєте життя в Україні, одночасно, що у вас життя зіпсується. А це, коротше, як завжди, у вас така історія, така культура, що все, що ви хочете, це зіпсувати життя іншим. Ну, до сраки, що вам також гімно повне, що жопа повна у Росії буде. Головне, тим хохлам зіпсувати життя, правильно? Ну, вам, любі мої кацапчики, вам не буде добре. Це я вам гарантую. І я вам також гарантую, що за кордоном ми ніколи цього не забудемо. І до кінця існування цієї планети будуть українці завжди сувати вам палиці в колеса. Аж до кінця існування вашої бридкої, гидотної країни в лапках. А ну дві, ну що тепер кажуть? О, один яблан сказав, ну прикольно. Що за собачий язик? О, цікаво.
То говори на українській.
Цікаво. Собачий язик каже. Язик ти свій Путіну в жопу суєш, чоловіче, а це мова. Що ще? Кастрюлі вони були. Ну блін, я не розумію, ну та сама фігня, кастрюлі. Кастрюлі. Слухай, для москалів взагалі кастрюля це щось нове. Вони там в своїх землянках, вони кастрюлю в житті не бачили нормально. А вони подивилися в Майдані, там, о, кастрюля, а що то таке? Що це таке кастрюля? Це якийсь великий винахід технологічний, та кастрюля, блін. Метал. Це не якась землянка, не якесь дерево, не якийсь казан чи самовар. Це метал, блін. А він метал хуєсос лиш бачив в танку, то весь метал, що він бачив, та й заіржавілий танк під хатою. Ой, Боже, ти зі своєю мовою заїбал. Ну, заїбал, то йди там кудись в інше місце, йди Путіна дивись. Якщо він тебе не заїбав, не знаю, що з тобою робити взагалі. Скільки років ту саму херню вам говорять. Кожен рік, новий рік, там починає вам казати, у нас все сложно, ну, так буде лучше, чи щось таке, якусь таку фігню, блін, вам каже. А ви тут все з'їдаєте, Боже, люди, які ви ідіоти все-таки. Ви тут все так з'їдаєте швиденько і вилизуєте взагалі то гіменце. Як у «Зеленому слоніку». Подивись «Зелений слонік». Чесне слово, подивись «Зелений слонік». Це документар за Росію. Боже, геніальний фільм. Геніальний фільм «Зелений слонік». Боже мій. Гівно один жере, пропонує іншому з'їсти, а той каже, що ти робиш? Забери це від мене. Ну, по-російськи там, звісно, фільм. А той, блін, інший говноєд, як його назвав той, він не розуміє, він взагалі не допирає, що гімно він їсть. Отак і ви всі їсте гімно, все ваше життя. І відбивається смак всього іншого. Відбивається, да? О, тупоголовий пацюк, чому не в ВСУ? Оце, бачиш, вже по-українськи боти починають писати, щоб так зловити заживеш, знаєш, зловити. Пацюк. Цікаво. Скоріший побєд українському народу. Ну, це розумію. З Казахстану, по-моєму, да? Казахський флаг. Прапор, якщо не помиляюсь. Все правильно. Ну, якщо... Я так вірю, що казахи, вони там нормальної пізди дадуть москалям. Їх будуть жопу ганяти звідти, після того, як побачать нормально, що в Україні сталося. Що ще каже? Кошмар, москаля, бла-бла-бла. Український язик звучить, як лай собаки. Ну, прикольно. А чекай, я щось не розумію. А я чув від вас, що українська мова це від російської пішла. Так що це означає? Наша мова звучить як лай, а ваша ні? Якщо наша схожа на вашу, то це і ваша звучить як лай, да? Чи може наша як лай, а ваша як гавкання, чи щось таке? Не розумію, знаєш, от мені, знаєш,
Але наша мова більш схожа на польська,
Ну, да.
в принципі.
Ні, ну послухай, я пам'ятаю, ми коли були коло вашої сраної там, вашого консульства там обісраного, там ви всі йшли голосувати, то все, ну більшість взагалі проти Путіна йшли голосувати, але то вам всім до сраки, ви дотепер гіменце їсте. Да. Ми там говорили з одною такою москалькою затятою. Я знаю, по-англійськи говорю, ну ми ж в Лондоні все-таки. В Лондоні по-англійськи нормально. А вона по-москальськи зі мною говорить, замість того, що по-англійськи. І я її розумію, і вона мене розуміє, але вона мене починає питати, а що ж ви по-русски, що ж ти по-русски не розмовляєш, ти ж мене розумієш? Я їй кажу, ми в Лондоні, по-англійськи, будемо по-англійськи говорити. О. Так в чому фішка, га? В чому цього всього фішка? Ви, люди, завжди себе поводите, ніби ви всім, все у ваших руках, У ваших руках одна річ. Це гіменце, що вам Путін дає. І все. Решта у вас нема, друзі. Все. Смерть роснацистам. Ну, я згоден з цим. Цей чувак правду каже. Що ще? Яка жалка порода свиней. Ну, якщо ти за Росію говориш, то я згоден, да. Це ж то, що відбувається, коли відкидаєш своє людство і приймаєш роль свині все своє життя. Тестостерона много і тратить, нігде лаять через екрани. Ти знаєш, що мені цікаво? От ти витрачаєш свій час, що пишеш тут онлайн, а мені кажуть, що я витрачаю. А це мене просто шокує, це цікаво. І всі кажуть, а чого не в окопі? Ну ти з окопа пишеш чи що? Keyboard warrior. Ладно, давайте. Віталік, все, я поговорив.
Все, всем спасибо.
Тут з винофермою.
Сжи унитазы воруем. Да, воруете. И детей воруете. Все, всем пока.
Я ні унітазів ніколи не бачу.
Ну. Жать, это полиция. А ух ты. Что у тебя есть палок? Вы не только унитазы воруете, вы еще и детей воруете. Привет, Виталий. Алесли. Привет, Виталий. Ах, ты кто такой? Я хотел отключаться. Виталий, если ты меня знаешь по имени, сам ты кто? Что за хлопчики? Алесли. А, ты не можешь отписать. Подожди. А Лесли, напиши еще раз, откуда ты знаешь мое имя, и мы будем включать. Вы мышей воруете. Виталий, а когда на родину? Виталий вернется на родину, когда оккупанты покинут ее. Пока оккупанты тільки що так друг назвав. А, окей, Павло, окей. Так, что еще? Цыш. Не, я с оккупантами не хочу иметь дело. Про какие оккупанты ты? Так. Виталий, ждем возвращения. Как только покинете мой родной город, оккупанты, так я и вернусь. Я так ездил каждый год. Сейчас я не могу ездить. 2 часа. А чё по-русски курлычишь? Ну, потому что это мой родной язык. У нас так на Донбассе обычно говорят. Так, дякуємо за підтримку. Дякуємо і тобі. Слава Україні, героям слава. Забежал собака, не покинем. Не, покинете, ребята, покинете. Вы покинули Херсон, покинете и другие. Так, кто вас ждет? Это, ага, можешь... Все. Все, всем пока и, наверное, до воскресенья.